somewhere, on a planet in Alliance-occupied UN space. 2 weeks after the beginning of the insurgency. He remembers the day that his life ended. Or rather, when it became official. Deep down, he knew it was coming. When GBS gave out news after news segments of how humanity was losing important battles. When the United Nations announced that every human will be given weapons and a little black book containing instructions, tips, and tactics for conducting guerrilla warfare. Recipes for improvised weapons and explosives. Guides on how to inflict maximum damage on the bugs, while also giving tips on how to escape and avoid them. Hatred. That was the only thing burning bright in him these days. Pure, incomprehensible hatred at the bugs. His home was gone. He has no idea what happened to his friends. Or his family. He's alone. His only companion was an old bolt-action rifle, a Mosin Nagant, that he picked up when the United Nations, in their last act of defiance, completely opened up all the military armories and stockpiles of nations around the Earth and core colonies to everyone and anyone. It was a large crowd at the weapons delivery site that was hastily set up on his planet when he got the weapon. A crowd filled with scared, but angry, people. People who wanted revenge for losing loved ones somewhere else in space. People angry that their way of life is being erased. And, as much as he doesn't want to admit, people who simply looked at this as a fun playground to have fun in. They got the usual weapons. Assault rifles, submachine guns, shotguns. They picked guns that best serve their needs. Find the bugs, and give them hell. Not him. He didn't like the idea of risking getting a bullet to the brain just to kill a few bugs. He wanted to kill them on his own time. He wanted to put the fear of God into them. He wanted to control them. So, after a few moments of navigating through a fearful, chaotic, and yet somewhat restrained crowd, he found the rifle in the surplus section with a ton of its ammo, 7.62x54 mmR. Finding a scope for it took a bit though. He ended up having to grab an adapter system for it, then picking up an adjustable sniper scope. Figuring out how to securely attach and adjust it took some time as well. But once he was set up, all he needed was practice. And there was plenty enough to last many lifetimes. Phantom, this is Outpost. Read us? A woman's voice crackled on his radio. Loud and clear. What's up? He responded, his eye peering through the scope, watching the area far down the street. He was set up deep in downtown, near the foodie district. Lots of restaurants and fast food places. We've got eyes on a bug patrol heading your way. Outpost informed. Looks like a full squad. Radio man, gunner, the works. Consider yourself weapons free. Understood. When I see him, they're dead. Phantom said simply. Flexing his fingers to keep his grip up, he started scanning all the possible entry points into his kill zone. His hunting ground. Set up to be in his peripheral vision was his homemade digital clock, the last piece of his old life. A few minutes passed by when the bugs finally arrived, slowly filtering out onto the street, keeping close to the wall. Their behavior was obvious. They were deep in human territory, and they knew it. Checking every angle, every location, very carefully, they moved with equal care. Suppressing the spike of excitement in him, Phantom began working to control his breathing, control the motion of his trigger finger. Once he was certain the entire squad appeared, Phantom just needed a moment to identify the squad leader. Staying true to their tactics, the leader is at the front, with the radio operator close by. Once he nailed their projected path and speed, he made his move. Breathing out, slowly depressing the trigger, he made the shot. A massive crack that, as of now, no longer startles him. Dust and small debris in a small radius around the gun's nozzle shot away from the shockwave. The gun kicking his padded shoulder despite the bipod he found some time after getting the gun. The leader's head exploded in a shower of gore and misty, green blood. The body instantly crumpled down. The radio man, close to the leader, had his face drenched in the remains of his leader. Thanks to the constant practice, in addition to the helpful benefit of keeping the weapon clean and greased, Phantom chambered a new round in no time without error. In the meanwhile, he saw the slow process of realization. Stunned shock, confusion, surprise, then unadulterated terror. The squad immediately scattered, diving into cover. He could hear their distant, faint shouting. It made him cackle, his mouth forming a wicked grin. This was where he found his joy, watching the bugs descend into mindless terror, not knowing what happened, dancing to his tune. Just as they had done to him, he will ruin their lives. And there's not a darn thing they can do about it. Outpost, this is Phantom. Squad leader dead. Want me to leave the squad, or finish him off? He radioed. We both know the answer to that. Outpost responded dryly, though light-heartedly. Phantom gave a wide, toothy grin. Always love hearing that. It's a good thing this part of town is deserted. As much as he accepts that, eventually, he may operate in a highly populated area, that kind of practice is something he's not looking forward to. Settling back into a comfortable state, he scanned along their cover. Judging by the sounds he's still hearing, they still don't know what to do. They must be close to breaking. He just needs one more to pop out. And there it was. Someone finally found the balls to try and look for him. Looks like binoculars. The bug was doing its best at minimizing how much it was exposed. Phantom decided to take that one out. Lining up the sights, he began his process again. Breathe out, depress the trigger. Another shot. Another hit. This time, in addition to the head exploding, there was also disintegrated electronics and plastics that shot out to add to the violent puff of death. He chambered a new round. That's 2, 3 left. When the echoing sound of his shot faded, he heard them break. The shouting started again, but now there was frantic screaming. He saw sudden, jerky movement behind the cover. The squad's falling apart, and there it is. One of them managed to get away from their more disciplined friends, hightailing it across the street, running with wild abandon, mindlessly focused on escaping. Tracing the path for a moment, Phantom calculated where and when it'll go. Focusing more, he delivered his third shot. But this time, not to the head, to the thigh. The bug crashed hard into the ground. Phantom saw a small puff of misty blood appear on hit. He rapidly chambered his third round, and waited. The bug had turned onto its back, writhing. Phantom could hear the hysterical screams of pain. It made him cackle more than previously. Looking back to their cover, he could see them desperately figuring out what to do. Several times, he saw one try and make the rescue, only to be forcefully pulled back into cover. Looks like some of them are smart, others not so much. He's starting to grow impatient now. Pulling his backpack close to him, he opened up the lower pocket and fished out a round. Armor-piercing. Pulling back the bolt, he let the unspent round fly out, catching it when it began to fall. He then loaded the AP bullet and chambered it in, setting the neglected round neatly on a chunk of rock next to him. He then spent several seconds studying where they were, watching their movements. As soon as he felt confident, he made his shot. The round kicked up a big dust cloud when it pierced the chunk of concrete. For a split second, he grew worried he made a mistake. And then he saw several of the bugs pop out from each side, falling to the ground and looking back. He got a hit. And that finally did it. They all started running. Quickly grabbing the fresh round he moved. He mentally noted he had 2 shots left. Darn. Looks like there will be survivors. Still, he killed off those he could. 5 shots. 5 bodies. One of those bodies was desperately screaming at their cowardly friends, even trying to crawl with them. Phantom is seeing the blood now. There was a lot of it. Either he pierced a vital spot, or the sheer force of the bullet ripped it apart. Outpost, Phantom here. He said on his radio. For dead, 1 dying, and the rest well, they'll have nightmares. Good enough. They're pretty determined to take our homes, so there'll be more another day. Outpost replied with satisfaction. Hope you got more bullets, though. Brass thinks it's time. Oh, is it? Phantom asked curiously, a twinge of excitement. Recon says that the shoot we're doing has really decimated the occupying force. Outpost explained. And we're not hearing word of reinforcements coming in, so now's the best time as any. You know where to go? Phantom was already packing up. Yep. On my way now. Z-114-3. For weeks after the beginning of the human insurgency, Zex felt sick to his stomach. The hasty, last-minute collection of soldiers and ships the Alliance could scrounge up has arrived at their destination. The world that his broodling, Zanhal, was assigned to. The soldier in Zex told him that he's gone. Too much time has passed. There's a very low chance of him surviving. But the sire in him is demanding hope. Continue to believe that Zanhao is still out there, surviving. Fleet Commander, his second, Keej, called to him. We've just established communications with planetside forces. Let's hear it. Zex said, outwardly a casual, composed officer. Inside, though, a nervous wreck who just wants to know if his broodling is alive. The Omnicom screen flickered to life. On it was a comms officer who had survived hell. The scene behind him was a mess, a dark sign of the situation. This is the 405th Security Unit. The planet is hostile. I repeat, the planet is now hostile. Human forces have overwhelmed most of our companies and are now in control over the vast majority of this location. 405th, this is Fleet Commander Zex of the 23rd Rapid Response Unit. Zex announced, tailoring his tone to be as reassuring as possible. What's your current status? What's the situation at the security base? We're barely holding on as it is. The officer replied, his voice breaking in relief. The humans have been absolutely relentless in their attack. We're losing good soldiers every single day. We can't hold out any longer. We need support right now. Understood. What are we looking at? Zex nodded, fear rising in him. And where is the base commander? What happened to him? Humans took us completely by surprise when they rose up. The officer explained. By the time what was left of our companies came back, most of our on-site forces and support personnel were eliminated. Commander Zanhao is alive but unable to command. A bittersweet surge of emotion rocked Zex. His broodling is alive, but he's also in a condition where he can't lead his unit. I'm sending every soldier we got to your location, but I need you to tell me what we're dealing with. What exactly are we fighting here? Humans equipped with United Nations gear. The officer started. Training too, by the reports the companies provided. But there's more. They have poison bombs at the ready. One breath, and you're on the ground, having a seizure. And if that doesn't kill you, they have suicide bombers. Insane humans who will run at you with bodies wired up in high-explosive bombs. Zex couldn't keep his composure. He had to lean over his command console, give himself time to process what he was hearing. After a few moments, he looked back at the desperate officer, eyes filled with renewed determination. As I've said, we're here and sending reinforcements. You're going to be fine. The officer was yanked out of his seat, right as the speakers were overloaded by what sounded like an explosion. Zex could hear the officer grunting and breathing, followed by intense gunfire and shouting. The officer then looked back at the Omnicom. By the Queen, here they come again. Fleet Commander, if your forces don't get down here now, we're done. We can't hold anymore. Everyone, quiet down and listen up. Fleet Commander speaking. Group Officer Zotzi barked. His group immediately obeyed, being tossed around by the turbulence of burning through the planet's atmosphere. The situation is bad, really bad. Zex began with a sigh. The base is under heavy attack. If we don't get down there and provide support, we will lose the base and with it, this entire world for good. The security group has taken extreme losses since the rebellion began and their commander is incapacitated. Make no mistake, we're the only ones who can keep this planet from falling to the rebels. Group officers, I'm authorizing the fleet to provide fire support when needed. Be aware, however, human rebels are launching sneak attacks on our supply network. Don't rely on fire support to win the day. You'll need to rely on the guns in your hands and the proud, brave soldiers that stand beside you. And above all else, this is just the beginning of the Queen's wrath upon the humans. It's now just a matter of when, not if, the humans will be brought back under control. You heard the fleet commander. Zotzi shouted. Don't sit tight behind a wall, waiting for our friends from the void to do the work for us. It'll be us and only us. That'll save the security group here. If you see a human with a gun, you kill them, no hesitation. Yeah. One of the soldiers cheered in agreement. All right, broodlings, we've just passed the cloud barrier. Their pilot, Zrux, announced over the ship's speakers. Make sure your guns are loaded and ready. Looks like a hot landing. Can't believe it's real. Zrux co-flyer, Zez, muttered. We should have been done here, and yet, here we are, fighting the same battle against the same race. Yeah, I hear you. Zrux nodded somberly. This shouldn't have happened. We're better than this. We needed to have this locked down harder than we did. I just thought, why won't the humans just give up already? Zez said in frustration. They lost. We took their homeworld. We defeated their military, and we sent their government running. Why won't they just stop and accept reality? I'm getting the feeling the only way they will is if we beat reality into their empty heads. Zrux sighed. With that said, though, I don't know if we'll get out of this without taking a beating ourselves. Their conversation was cut short by the rapid, shrill beeping from their console. Their sensors are reading a massive number of blips. Heading towards them. All units, all units. This is Yana lead. Zrux shouted over his group link. We have fast flyers incoming and coming hard. Prepare evasive maneuvers. Another, harsh and obnoxious, alarm sounded off. Zez panicked. Missile. Missile. Zrux slammed on the defenses. The rear-facing tubes immediately launched hot flares, massive columns of smoke left behind them. Zez shouted out when a missile whooshed by their control deck, close enough to be heard. To their right, one of the transports got hit. Zez could see the soldiers within being sucked out of the transport. Yana lead, this is 4. We're hit. We're going down, going down. The pilot shouted. Zrux could see the transport trying in vain to control itself, but it was obviously on its death march. This is 5. I have visual on the fast flyers. There's an entire swarm of them. Another reported. Zez could see them now as well, and Yana 5 was correct. An entire wall of flyers blocked the horizon, and in one synchronous hole, they began their attack runs. A transport in front of them was hemorrhaging pieces of its hull, with occasional sparks. The flyers were using repeaters. Zrux did everything he could to try and keep his transport flying, but he knew the grim truth. His flyer was just too big and slow to dodge the human flyers. Just like with the rebellion itself, intel had failed them. They were assured that the rebels were just that, rebels. Guns and the occasional roller, but no flyers. He was forced out of his thoughts when he felt something warm slap onto his face. Wiping it, he saw that it was blood. He looked over to his right. Zez got hit. A flyer strafed in front of them and riddled him with rounds. It was all too much at once. Focusing on flying, his rage at the incompetence of Alliance intelligence, and his shocked despair at seeing his friend die just like that. Everyone hang on. He shouted over the speakers to the group he's carrying. The landing's too hot. I'm getting us down now. A new alarm. Proximity. Bewildered, he looked around to see if he was already near the surface. But he wasn't. There was something else. It was a transport, its entire front section chewed to pieces by the flyers. And in one quick and painful flash, Zruz found peace. Zruz, what's going on out there? Zotzi screamed after being slammed into the wall, rising up in the air. Not like this. It's too zaxing early. Zaya screamed, hanging onto his chair straps for dear life. Stay calm and hang on. Zotzi shouted back. Iza, open the darn door and check on Zruz. Iza did his best to navigate the chaotic passenger bay. Nearly losing his footing a few times, he finally reached the door. He struggled and yanked as hard as he could, but each time it moved, it snapped back closed. I can't get it open. You two, get over there and help him, hurry. Zotzi was screeching at this point. The two gunmen rapidly dashed over and lent their arms to forcing the door open. After a few tries, they finally got it open, only to be launched back, lifeless, when shrapnel from a destroyed flyer killed them. And before Zotzi could say anything else, they hit the ground, their lives ending in one quick second. Zlanxla, Alliance homeworld, Royal Palace. 5 weeks after the beginning of the human insurgency, Her Royal Highness, Queen of the Alliance, Zlanx DXXV, was bored out of her mind. Lounging in her seat, made with the most exquisite wood in all of the Alliance, and with comforts made by the softest of fabrics, she was waiting for her military staff to assemble. It was the daily emergency briefing, called by her decree 1 week after the humans began their mass rebellion. Shortly after, she grew deeply frustrated and confused as to why her fine black scales repeatedly delivered failure after failure with the humans, especially after their quick, flawless victory over them before. She was snapped out of her daydreaming when the doors opened. They were finally here. About 5 commanders in total neatly filed into the room and took their seats, organizing their documents onto the fine, large wooden U-table, all of them facing her. "It's about time," she muttered with a scowl. "I hope today brings good news." The commanders looked at each other nervously before one mustered the courage. "I'm afraid only minor." Fleet Commander Zex, who was placed in command of our emergency reinforcements, has managed to retake the administrative center of our occupational forces in human territory, but at great cost. "What kind of cost?" Zlanks asked, her voice tinged with rising frustration. 30 transports out of 110 have been destroyed during their approach. The commander began, clearly afraid of her potential reaction, and almost 25% of the fleet was destroyed by unidentified human void forces. Judging by the reports, they have launched anti-electronic missiles just before sending out a wave of suicide voidcraft at them. They immediately retreated when the fleet managed to regroup and return fire. "Why are we having such difficulty?" Zlanks demanded, straightening her posture. "Why is it that the moment that their government declared surrender, we instantly went from defeating them at every moment to taking catastrophic losses? Incompetence by the Black Scales, Your Highness." The second commander spoke up, firm in voice. "Due to our swift victory over the humans, they have decided to relegate the Anorans as maximum priority, diverting the minimum of resources towards our occupation efforts." "You are categorically wrong, Lord Commander." A black-colored easy eye spoke out. "We are losing because you continued to believe that, in defeat, the humans would remain fragmented and have no desire to resist. Instead, as we are now seeing, the humans have quickly learned from their errors and are determined to drive us out. Just look at their homeworld. The vast majority of our forces are experiencing the fiercest and bloodiest of the rebellion on that world, and all because every human has now united and are fighting us as one." "Enough." Zlanks raised her voice, instantly silencing the bickering commanders. "What about other locations? How is the region overall?" "Much worse, I'm afraid." The first sighed in anxiety. "The humans are what they lacked in void combat, they more than made up for in surface fighting. We're encountering tactics and equipment we have never encountered before." "Explain," Zlanks demanded. "I'll refer to one location in particular as a rather frightening example," he said, grabbing his documents. "Supply Point Shuha. We are getting repeated reports of a human, armed with a repeater designed for extreme distance engagement, wiping out our security group there and never having been found." "What do you mean, extreme distance?" Zlanks questioned in confusion. "Exactly as it sounds, Your Highness." He answered simply. "Using special-made bullets, with special repeaters, we are encountering humans who possess the ability to kill our soldiers at distances beyond what we can see. Again, with Supply Point Shuha, one sniper, in particular, is proving to be a source of serious morale issues for our men. He is known as the Phantom. While I'm sure it is just propaganda, Phantom is reputed to have earned over 100 kills on Shuha alone. Nobody has ever been able to find him, and any soldiers sent to do so are either dead or have given into their fear and ran back to base or elsewhere. So what are we doing to stop them then?" Zlanks asked, her annoyance growing. "What are you doing to stop these snipers from killing our men without retribution?" "We are currently working on a process," he responded. "Whenever a sniper is confirmed present, group officers are to try and narrow down a possible location from which they're firing from. Once they do, they are given authorization to call in a flyer strike on that possible location. We will destroy an entire building if we have to. Buildings can be replaced," Zlanks said, leaning back in her seat. "Bullets and missiles too. Soldiers, not so much. Keep me informed. Now, what about the Anorans? Are there any good news in that regard?" "I'm afraid not, Your Majesty." The first commander responded meekly, in voice and in his bow. "The Empire is, without a doubt, giving everything they have towards fighting us. If we transfer even a small amount of our forces to aid in counter-rebellion efforts, there is a significant chance that the Anorans will achieve a breakthrough. I'm afraid there's more as well," the Black Scale commander said, immediately receiving a discouraging, gentle smack from his colleague. "Let him speak." Zlanks commanded. What is it? We are receiving reports that the Anaran Blackguards are sending volunteers deep into human space. He explained grimly. We believe that the Empire and the United Nations remnants are working together, taking advantage of their covert transportation network to safely ferry those volunteers into hot zones. How? Zlanks asked. I thought that, at the very least, we've cut off Empire access to our new holdings? Human illusion tech. He answered simply. Just as we have encountered when the rebellion happened, they have adapted their technology onto their voidcraft. We believe they are using unidentified fabrication facilities deep in Empire space. The humans are investing everything into a strategy of hiding and sneak attacks. Your Highness, that is grave news indeed, if they are true. The first commander raised his voice as well as standing up. The humans are already dangerous, even without their illusion tech. Anaran Blackguards are, in all but the most impossible circumstances, amongst the most unstoppable ground forces the Anarans could bring to the field. If the humans and Anarans are indeed working closely together as we're seeing, the situation is spiraling out of control. The second commander interjected. If we don't put down this rebellion fast, it's only a matter of time before we lose strategic control, and everything we've done will be erased. I don't understand. Why are the Blackguards so dangerous? Zlanks asked in confusion. They represent the monstrous brutality of the Anaran regime. The first commander began, restrained fear in his voice. Their soldiers are no longer even Anaran. Vast sections of their bodies replaced with foul machinery and electronics. Just one Blackguard can have the firepower of an entire company and are capable of extreme tactical flexibility. You're actually saying that the Empire is butchering some of the best men they have by forcefully grafting biomachines onto them? Zlanks questioned in utter disbelief. Not by force, Your Highness. He shook his head. They do so willingly, some of them consenting to becoming pure machines. Zlanks leaned back in her seat for several moments, still trying to process what she is hearing. When she was done, she straightened her posture, her expression entirely displeased. All I have heard thus far is pathetic excuses for failure. The humans have been defeated. While I do believe that they have indeed learned why they were defeated, I strongly believe that they lack the ability to truly hurt us the way you say they can. So let me make myself absolutely clear. I will not tolerate any more failures. If I continue to hear of such, I will begin looking for those who will bring me victories. Have I made myself clear? The entire cabinet were stunned into silence. After a clarifying insistence from the Queen, they all nodded their confirmation. Good. Now, is there anything else to report, or can we consider this briefing over? She asked. Within a moment, she spotted hesitation in her black-scale commander. You. What is it? Don't think I don't see that look. The commander gave a heavy sigh. There is one more thing, but I strongly advise skepticism, for we haven't confirmed this as of yet. Intercepting UN Anaran communications, we are picking up mentions of something called the Phoenix Project. All we have confirmed thus far is that the UN remnants and the Empire will be working closely together for it. Nothing more beyond that. So the humans and Anarans are cooperating for something? Zlanks questioned. Why should I be skeptical? Because we haven't found any additional details beyond its name, and that the two races are working together. The Black Scale answered. No confirmation on its purpose, what resources are being diverted to it, nothing. Zlanks glared at him. All the more reason to find out, correct? I want the Black Scales on top of it. Find out what this Phoenix Project is, immediately. As you command, Your Majesty. The Black Scale bowed. One final note I want discussed. The Queen stated. What's the current status of my new soldiers? How are the conscripts? They have already begun their basic training, Your Majesty. The first commander answered. As to be expected, we are seeing complaints and disagreements with the act, but those are of no consequence. We believe that, ideally, the conscripts will be ready for deployment within a few months. Good. Zlanks nodded, finally pleased at something going right. As soon as they are, I want all of them deployed to the human region. I want this rebellion smashed beyond repair. I am not content with defeating them a third time, or a fourth, or a fifth. I want them broken. Make darn sure this does not happen again, ever. It will be done, Your Greatness. The commander bowed. Unknown colony. Alliance-occupied UN space. 5 weeks after the beginning of the insurgency. This was the greatest thing Phantom has ever done, and it was made even better by how bad of a start it had. A couple or so weeks ago, Outpost informed him that the resistance was making their attack on the main base of the occupation. The tolls of guerrilla warfare against the bugs had made its effects known rapidly. He could see it. Every time they left the supposed safety of their fortified base, they were hyper-alert. Every shadow, every bouncing bits of dust, startled them. And despite their best efforts, any cargo ship that arrived to bring supplies were hit. Some escaped with a few dings and scratches, others were destroyed outright. It got to a point where Outpost believed they were ripe for a full-scale assault. So, sending out the call, every squad of freedom fighters and lone wolves came together and made their attack. But even with the built-up damage, the bugs held their own. Against all odds, they managed to beat back a ferocious attack by the human resistance. But, after studying them for some time, Phantom realized it was done so at a cost they couldn't afford. It was at that realization that Phantom requested Outpost to let him have the base, all to himself. After a moment of confusion, Outpost realized what he was planning and gave the green light. Now, fast forward to today, and he has done excruciating damage, picking off officers in their very command posts, sniping the bugs as they lie sleeping in their own beds. Hell, using the AP rounds he stockpiled, he even had some fun sniping the pilots as they made their landing procedures. It was the most hilarious sight to him. The ships suddenly lurching forward, crashing into their structures. One even exploded. Looking around, as he usually does, the psychological damage is starting to show. The bugs have retreated to their more fortified structures, covering up the windows, as high up and small as they were. Rarely going outside now. Their supplies either far less than expected or completely burned up. There were a couple of times in the beginning after the attack that the bugs sent out small patrols to try and find him. However, as amazing as it is, Phantom is starting to think that the bugs have no concept of sniping. And if they never learn the concept of extreme long-range precision, that also means they have no idea how to counter one. All he had to do was find a nice little hidey hole to get comfy in, wait for a period of time, and then just come back out and relocate. He had taken out so many bugs, they can't even afford sending out search and destroy squads now. They're completely helpless before him. That very thought always makes him grin like a madman. Phantom? Heads up, we're tracking a bug ship inbound to the base. Outpost said over the radio. Looks like another cargo run. Got it. I'm ready. He replied, growing excited at causing even more mayhem. I've got to say, Phantom, she continued. For someone who's never been in the military, or hell, never even shot a gun before, you got really good, really fast. I don't know, Phantom shrugged. All I've been doing was just picking some random, out-of-the-way spot and just started shooting. Hell, I'm still missing some shots. From my end, I can't really tell. Outpost gave a chuckle. You're doing a ton of damage to the bugs. That's all we're looking for. And that's all I'm providing. Phantom replied with a grin. He started to hear the roar of the ship's engine slowly grow, signaling its approach. Ship's arriving. Time to concentrate. Understood. Outpost responded. It was just as before. The ship approached at an angle to the base. Based on tracking their movements, they still need to account for atmospheric burn in when changing between flying in space and in the air. And just as before, Phantom is waiting until the ship is just about to make its landing before taking the shot. That also reminded him. The bugs do realize that a human is literally shooting the pilots dead, so they tried to make the replacements change their heading on landing. Phantom finds this hilarious as hell that the new headings they chose were facing exactly where he relocated. Something that he actually didn't intend, but that just makes it even funnier to him. If anything, he's actually starting to wonder why they didn't switch to just para-dropping their supplies onto the base. Maybe that's another thing they never learned? Phantom can't tell if he should be humiliated, or not that the United Nations got their actarns handed to them by a race who just weren't that good at fighting as humans were. At least in terms of tactics or maneuvers or whatever. It was then he had an idea. Grinning, he decided to continue torturing them. He'll let the ship land. See where it goes from there. It took the ship several minutes to finally be approaching the base proper. Its thrusters roaring loudly, it lazily turned towards the center of the base as it gently lowered itself onto the main landing pad. But then it stopped, hovering just short of the pad itself. Phantom thinks it just now discovered the wreckage of one of the ships who got the worst luck out of everyone. After another few minutes of agonizing patience, the ship finally decided to brave the scene and land. The thrusters whined into silence. Its rear hatch opened up and formed a ramp. That was when the pilot, or maybe a crewman, carefully walked down the ramp, constantly looking around, seeing if there was a danger waiting for them. If only they knew. "Hey, Phantom?" Outpost asked on the radio. "I got an Anaran here who wants to talk to you. Says he's representing Phoenix, or whatever. Think you might want to hear what he has to say." "Anaran? As much as I'd like to see one. What are they doing all the way out here?" Phantom asked in shocked confusion. "Let's find out." Outpost responded. After a few moments of silence, a male voice introduced himself. "Phantom? This is Major Anare, of the Anaran Blackguards, representing Phoenix. We've heard about you both from internal Alliance communications, as well as from various resistance cells we're in contact with. You have a skill set we're very interested in having. If now's not a good time, we can discuss this back with Outpost." Now he's interested. Not only that, but people are talking about him? Bugs and humans? Anarans even? The thought of that put a smile on his face. "I'm not doing anything important. Outpost? Send him my way. Should be safe enough by the time he gets here." "Excuse me? What about the base?" Outpost asked incredulously. As soon as the bug crewman came running like a madman out of the base, he took his shot. Impact? Square in the dot chest? Thorax? He didn't care. He got a kill shot. Like I said, should be safe enough. There was a few moments of silence before a response came from Outpost. "They're on the way. Behave, all right? I got a feeling they're the real deal."